if you have a FOIA card and you have a firearm inside of your home, you can thank Otis McDonald, David Colleen Lawson for the McDonald versus Chicago case that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court.
I'm Rhonda Ezell, president and co-founder of Chicago Guns Matter, lead plaintiff in Ezell versus City of Chicago, and I'm from Chicago, Illinois. The goal of Chicago Guns Matter is to educate the Black and urban communities on how to legally possess and obtain an Illinois concealed carry license, as well as educate them on the plaintiffs who have stood up for them and fought for their rights and who are still fighting for the rights.
The 5-4 decision resulted from a case against the city of Chicago and its suburb of Oak Park. Both have laws that effectively ban handgun possession by almost all private citizens. The lead plaintiff in the Chicago case, Otis McDonald, challenged the law after he said criminals broke into his home and made repeated threats. Mayor Daley says the city will rewrite its gun ordinance to comply with Second Amendment rights, but he offered no explanation on how that might be achieved. Robert Raffel, VOA News.
I saw that on the news, that the city of Chicago now can own a firearm inside of the home, so I wanted to comply with that. I was fresh off of life support. I had already had people try to break into my home on 3 separate occasions. So I said, let me go and figure out what I need to do to legally own a firearm inside of the home. And as I took a class, you know, it was a 2-day course, which I didn't know at the time. I signed up, I paid the fees, we got in the class, we did the first portion, and then they passed out this paper and said, you know what, guys, tomorrow, this is where we're gonna go. And I said, tomorrow? And we're gonna go to Dundee, Illinois to shoot for the range portion. And I was like, Dundee? I asked questions, I was like, so why are we going here? And then that's when it was like, well, you know, there's no gun range in the city of Chicago. These are the people that we have our setup with, and we do it all the time. I now have to travel at least 45, 50 plus miles just to comply. And at that point, I was in no condition to try to find my way to the gun range. I came back and I thought I'd reach out to my state organization, which was the Illinois State Rifle Association, because I am a lifetime member. So I was calling to get information and telling them what I went through, the red tape that I went through to comply with this ordinance. And at some point in time, after we talked about the things that I went through, we came to the conclusion that my rights had been violated and Ezell versus Chicago was born.
I was co-counsel on McDonald versus Chicago, which struck down Chicago's home handgun ban. I was also one of the attorneys on Ezell versus City of Chicago. Well, I think the Ezell case was an important case to take on because of what was obvious to us and what the courts eventually noted about what the City of Chicago was doing. On a very micro level, this was a wrong that needed to be righted. But on a very macro level, this was the city basically once again trying to put its boot on everybody else's neck.
It is very important for law-abiding citizens to be able to go to a gun range to continue the firearm safety and education in the use of firearms. Because you've only used it one time and you go home and you put it in a box, you lock it away and you store it away, and then when something happens, how accurate are you going to be? So it's important that people, you know, get the opportunity to go to the range as much as they possibly can. And they shouldn't have to travel so far outside of city limits to do so. It took 7 years. 7 years. The first case lasted a year because that was the initial case in fighting for the right to have a gun range in the city of Chicago. But then after that, the city continued with more shenanigans and more restrictions in place, making it, you know, where you can't even build a gun range with so many restrictions in place. So we went back to court, and just last year, we got our final decision in the case. So it took nearly a decade. It took 7 years to finish the Ezell versus the city of Chicago.
You know, the court flat out stated that the city was trying to be quote unquote too clever by half and quote unquote thumbing its municipal nose at the Supreme Court in doing what it was doing. And it was blatant. The Ezell case has in many ways set the standard of legality for how Second Amendment cases get analyzed. Is it the only one? No, of course, but is it very important? Yeah. So beyond striking down the range ban and later striking down a number of restrictions on ranges, which was phase 2 of the case, the Ezell case has had many benefits for legal advocates in the Second Amendment field.
Well, what's next for Chicago Guns Matter is to continue educating the people on who we are, putting faces to the cases so they can identify with the people that have fought for their rights, so that they can see that it's people that look like them, people that live in the neighborhood like them, regular everyday people that have stood up and fought for them. It is the ultimate goal to bring a gun range, to actually bring the first brick and mortar gun range to the city of Chicago. There isn't one available for law-abiding citizens. So why there are ranges available for the police department, there aren't any available for the general public. And we do have a lot of gun owners, a lot of FOID card holders in the state of Illinois, a lot of concealed carry holders in our city. So we think it's necessary that those people get out and continue their education in firearm safety.